the backstory of your boot camp and what you think is making the difference?
Well, as you kind of said there in my introduction, I used to be a snowboard instructor, globe-trotting snowboard instructor, and kind of I really love that lifestyle and things. And I worked myself up to, as you said there, being a course leader. So I was kind of in charge of all the training for new instructors and things. And although it's fantastic snowboarding and things, kind of moving place to place every 6 months is a little bit wearing on one's sanity.
Yes.
And so yeah, and so I really love the coaching element though. So I decided that I'd go study at the European Institute of Fitness, become a personal trainer through that. And then I did about 3 months of personal training just at a chain gym. And this is kind of like a common experience for personal trainers, new personal trainers, that is. And I kind of almost fell out of love with personal training, you know, just for kind of like, you know, a few weeks.
Yes.
And so I decided, right, just looking back at kind of my snowboard career, what I really liked about it was the group environment. So I decided to set up a fitness boot camp because they were kind of on the rise 4 years ago. It's 4 years ago this month, in fact. So it's our 4-year anniversary.
So happy birthday to the fitness boot camp.
Yeah, that's right. And so I kind of set up an indoor fitness boot camp because I looked at all the others. The others were outside. They were kind of military focused, lots of shouting, lots of sit-ups and things. And so I decided to do almost the complete opposite. I put it indoors. I said no sit-ups, no shouting. Right?
Oh,
that's kind of like one of our things that we say. And so I kind of built up to 3 full boot camps by myself, and I was very, very content with that. But then I kind of thought, well, you know, I'm helping a lot of people, but I want to make it even bigger, you know, how else can I do this? And kind of the best way to kind of expand a business very, very quickly is through franchising. So kind of after a year, I decided to put together a franchise model, and then kind of gone from my first location to 10 locations around the UK, approximately helping around about 500 to 700 people a month, obtaining and maintaining a healthy lifestyle.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, you know, great ideas, and then the execution for that. So, what do you think makes the difference in you know, for people that, you know, other fitness or wellness people who may be thinking about doing some kind of group program? Could you offer any you know, what would you have liked to? What would be the number one thing that you would have liked to have known when you started 4 years ago? That, you know, knowing what you know now, I guess, you know, what would have been the biggest leverage point for you to make that work?
It's probably getting your name out through social media is kind of one of the biggest things, especially now. Almost everybody is on social media, and particularly the people that have got disposable income.
Yes.
Very much go through that. You know, if your line of business is senior fitness, then, you know, social media isn't the way to go. But if your target market is kind of like 30 to 50-year-old women with, you know, around about 10 to 30 pounds to lose, then, you know, you want to be on social media and things like that. And kind of getting stuff together from the start is important, as you said there, Dan. And having a podcast, which is super easy to set up, setting up a YouTube channel, having a blog, and not just having that, but trying to create interesting content is what it's all about. Content that is going to be shareable and enjoyable, entertaining and educational at the same time. That's kind of what it's all about. So trying to get that right from the start is a really good idea. And just making sure you've got kind of the referral schemes in place and know what you're kind of going to be doing almost on a daily basis as well.
Right, fantastic tips, and I think it's good, very relevant for lots of people. Now let's switch gears to we've been addressing more of the business side, but let's talk about the consumer, the average, the average person. You dealt with hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and what if you were looking for the average person who's thinking, hey, why would the average person join a boot camp? What are the advantages, and what do people like about it? I've never joined one. We have done some group programs, but what have you learned about that? And as far as what do people get out of it that they don't perhaps get from working with a trainer one-on-one or trying to go it alone?
Mm-hmm. So for the majority of people, and particularly women, prefer to do things in groups. Mm-hmm. We are social animals, the majority of us. Yes. Anyway, and so you'll get people that want to do the personal training thing, but they'll go out of their way to find a one-to-one trainer. The majority of people prefer to do things in a social environment, and people kind of even get better results in that group scenario because of the social support that they actually get. Yes. So that's kind of like the massive benefit with that, and kind of alongside of that, you have the added benefit of people that have kind of walked the path before you. Yes. As well. So you don't just get the experience of the coach, you get the experience of kind of the boot camp veterans that are there as well, which is a massive thing in our boot camp. So you've got people that have had massive success stories, lost 70 pounds, in just over a year. So people that are kind of
still coming.
They're still coming because they want to maintain it. That's our thing. We help people obtain and maintain a healthy lifestyle. That's what it's all about. And it's not just about having kind of a gym and like all this equipment and things, but it's about creating a community that people can sort of join and be a part of. Part of that is getting the support of people that have walked the path before you have as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. That's something I hadn't considered, but it's we all I think just with basic psychology, we know that when people try to do something new, one of the obstacles is often actually believing that someone like them can do mm-hmm. X, Y, Z, and so that's brilliant because they're not only looking at, it's not like they look at someone's website and they see the success stories, but maybe even a video of the successful person who used to be obese and now they've lost 100 pounds or something, but they can actually see them live and direct. So mm-hmm. that's very powerful. So that's wonderful to a great concept. Okay, well let's jump into a couple of other topics if we can. One of the things that many people, as far as let's talk about obstacles to weight loss and. What would you, for your experience, what would you, for the average person who doesn't know anything about health, fitness, nutrition, or anything like that, or sometimes it's even worse if they think they know and they're going by the old school, calories in, calories out, the failed paradigm that. Uh-huh. What are maybe the 3 or 4 biggest obstacles that you see for the average person to having success with fat loss?
I think the first one is kind of seeing what somebody believes first. So when somebody comes to our boot camp, they fill out a lifestyle review, and in that lifestyle review, we ask. What are 10 healthy foods and what are 5 naughty foods? The naughty foods are always kind of similar in terms of, cakes, biscuits and things like that. Just refined and processed foods. But then when you have the 10 healthy foods, then you get things like whole grain bread, yes. And cereal and things like that, which is kind of like a really important thing to discover from someone, because at that point in time, that's what they believe is healthy.
Yes.
So it's important to understand what that person believes to help them move forward. So once you have that information, then you ask, so why do you think that's healthy? And the common answer is that, well, the government says it is, and there's a big green tick on the box, so
right.
it's got to be healthy, right? And then then you can start the discussion of, well, did you know that whole grain bread raises your blood sugar the same as a Snickers bar? Right. So then you can start to kind of break it down for them to help them kind of move forward with their thinking. So you're kind of meeting them at where they are, yes, and then you're helping guide them kind of through that, which is kind of the main thing. So making sure that you understand where someone's coming from first is the most important thing as a coach. And in any walk of life anyway. Oh, yes. That's imperative to kind of moving things forward. And then kind of after that, one of the most difficult things is firstly being female, unfortunately. However terrible this sounds, female biology and biochemistry, physiology is a lot more complicated than males.
Oh, no question.
If men drop carbs, they'll lose weight like that. It's a done deal. Yes. If females drop carbs, they don't always lose massive amounts of weight easily. And the way that I explain this is it's about trying to discover that person's biochemical balance, and kind of restricting carbohydrates is obviously part of that, but then you kind of have the intricacies as well in terms of just making sure that perhaps they should remove dairy for a little bit, maybe even nuts for a little bit, and then bring it back slowly but surely, and then kind of you can kind of search that out. But at the same time, you've got to have some smart exercise in there as well. To try and increase someone's insulin sensitivity and leptin sensitivity and things like that as well.
Oh, fantastic. That's I think we've had similar experiences with it is quite a bit easier to work with the male physiology than the female physiology, which is more complex and complicated, and also sometimes it seems like I think a lot of the women that I've dealt with, they've actually been they're actually usually more frustrated because they've been trying to do what the government and much of the medical community has sort of said they should do. Cut the fat and exercise more, eat less, and everything works. And I remember in my early days, actually, back in the early 90s, I was doing a lot of personal training. In fact, a lot of my clients were doctors because I was working for a hospital-based wellness and sports medicine center in the Memphis, Tennessee area. And so I remember just thinking, well, it worked for a few months, and then everyone was plateauing. For the most part, except for some of the men were still able to, who were maybe they were just more mesomorphs, and as they started to build a bit of muscle mass, so their metabolism was going up, so it still worked. But most of the people, I was thinking, well, what was the explanation? Why did they plateau? And even I had them doing food diaries and all this stuff, and doing some, and they were very responsible people. So it appeared to me, well, they must just be lying to me. They must be eating the Snickers bars or the Haagen-Dazs bowl of ice cream before bed, and then they don't put it in the food diary, and and that was the only explanation. And finally, it was a way to I guess to try to protect myself from thinking the unthinkable question, what if everything I'd learned was wrong? Which is, what it's one of the things we have to deal with also, in dealing with the older authority figures, the younger if you just looking at social media yesterday, it occurred to me, how many younger doctors, they're obviously they're not so entrenched, and you see a lot of people who are really stepping out, but in general, a lot of the I'm also in the luxury travel business, and we happen to have a lot of doctors. So that's one of the things that sort of bringing me back into this to really push myself back into the fitness and wellness area is talking to the doctors. A lot of them are specialists in for example, I had a guy he's a specialist in anesthesia. And he knows more about that than anyone probably in his area. But he has no idea about nutrition, but he doesn't know what he doesn't know. Now, how have you dealt with that yourself? And how would you any strategies to trying to deal with that kind of battle, or is it a battle you shouldn't waste time on?
It depends if somebody's kind of where they are in the model of behaviour change, I suppose.
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you know about kind of transactional theory and things like this, but
no,
it's kind of.
I've heard about it, but tell us briefly, if you would.
Yeah. So there's 5 stages of behaviour change. So there's pre-contemplation. So if somebody's in this first stage, pre-contemplation, there's not going to be any change at all. You know, so it's not even worth trying to convince someone. You can suggest, you know, maybe just take a look at that article or something like that, you know, but, you know, don't waste your time trying to convince someone. Then there's contemplation. So perhaps they've looked at the article and you kind of, and then they maybe ask some more questions about it. Is there any more evidence about this? You know, and then you start sending them links to PubMed. Yes. And things like that, especially if they're kind of doctors and scientists and things like that. And I've experienced this. You know, I've had general practitioners at my boot camp who were, you know, initially very skeptical about the diet, and they completely changed their tune due to the fact that, you know, you just send them the evidence. And it's like, well,
sure.
You know, can't really argue with that too much. And then after contemplation, I'm trying to remember.
Well, don't worry, we can look that up.
But basically, there's then they start to go into change.
Yes.
Basically, so then they start to apply the principles, and when they start to see results, that's the main thing. When they start to see results, that's when somebody starts to change their mind. So when they see results within themselves is kind of the most important thing, really. And when they've made those changes, seen the results, and then that's when the behaviour is actually changed.
Yes,
basically.
Fantastic.
So there's kind of those 5 stages that you need to think about. So kind of it's about trying to figure out where they are on that timeline. And you can it's just about asking the right questions. So one of the things is asking, you know, give me 10 examples of healthy foods, give me some examples of naughty foods. And even when people put down naughty foods, they sometimes put down cheese and butter and things like that. And then you can ask, you know, why do you think that's naughty? Because it's got saturated fat and things like that. And then you can start to talk about that that line of thought and things like that. So that's kind of the way to go about it, is just ask questions, find out where they are on that timeline of behavior change, and then you can provide the evidence, or just go down a line of questioning to get them to the next stage.
Right. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, that's a great strategy, both for whether it's dealing with, you know, someone who thinks they already know, although they're confused, or dealing with just the average person who's probably been indoctrinated with the wrong information for the last 20 to 30 years. And another thing to add on to that, sorry, Dan, is Socratic questioning. So I'm a big reader on ancient philosophy.
Oh, fantastic! From Taoism to Stoicism, anything like that, you know, I love it. And kind of the reason for this was that, you know, during my time as a personal trainer and things at the beginning, I started to read all of this, and it started to make a lot of sense. You know, Socrates, who, you know, is 3,000 almost years old, sort of set up this model of questioning, which seems evidently simple, but for its time it was very, very progressive. And it's just about asking questions about common sense statements. In this statement of, you know, low fat is healthy, you know, are there any instances where that isn't true? And the randomized controlled trials, the 20 plus randomized controlled trials of the past 15 years have shown that not to be true. So,
Yes.
there's got to be something wrong with that statement. And the point is that, probably low fat isn't always the best.
Yes, yeah, no question, no question. Fantastic. Well, let's change gears a little bit and go into, well, one of the things that I think a lot of people feel frustrated with, even when they get the right information, and this may be a little more common with females, as we mentioned. But a lot of times people begin a new program. They're starting to eat correctly. They're doing the exercise, and they start to see some results. But then they hit the plateau, and they might even start to gain some weight So could we talk a little bit about your experience with that, and how would you let's say you have one of your customers tells you, or one of your people, one of your trainers or something, hey, that situation, I'm really frustrated because I'm coming out to the boot camp, I'm eating what you tell me to eat, but I'm still gaining weight, and and obviously you're at the point with it. If you don't deal with it, they might fall off the wagon and go back and get on the internet and start looking around, and then they find some scam that, as we all know, there's probably, it seems like there's 1,000 scams per every legitimate health and fitness offer that's out there, at least. So, how would you handle that kind of situation?
So again, kind of the best place to start is to find out exactly what they're doing.
Right.
Ideally having a food diary there, which will give you like at least 80% truth of what they're actually doing. I mean, the best thing to actually do is to ask for a photo food diary. So that's something that we ask people to do as well. So all they have to do is that they just throughout the day, they just take photos of whatever they're eating or consuming, even drinking, and then they just email it straight to the coach.
Yes.
And then you can sort of say, maybe you should just reduce the amount of dairy in that, or just make sure you're kind of limiting the nuts a little bit, and things like that, or even just changing things up, like because some people will, despite you saying all of these things in the lifestyle review about whole grains not being the best, then they end up having a whole grain sandwich, and then you say, well, why did you have a whole grain sandwich when I specifically said no to that? So it's about trying to find out exactly what they're doing, as much as you can. You won't find out exactly what they're doing, but 80% truth, I like to think.
Right.
That's totally speculative, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And then you can start to advise them on that, because they want to get results and things, and a lot of people are upfront that I did have a Diet Coke or a Coke today and things like that, which is fantastic to hear, and that can give you an insight into that. But if somebody is truly nailing a real food, low carb, high fat diet, then kind of the obvious place to kind of start is dairy for a start. Really reduce the amount of dairy, and if they are going to have any dairy, just make sure it's kind of like the fattiest bits, so either cheese, cream or butter. No milk or yogurt. Remove that for a start, but then ideally I'd recommend people just go on a 2-week dairy detox just for a little bit, just to see if that changes anything. And particularly in women, it's kind of a common experience that they actually do end up losing a little bit of weight. That happened recently in our Diet Dunces project, which is our online diet club. Liz, one of the members there, she removed dairy. She'd been stalling for ages, like 6 months, and she had been sticking to a low carb, high fat diet, real foods for the most part. And yeah, just removing that one thing can really start some more weight loss. Now, the thing with that is that people will start to think, so it's about the calories, right? So they're removing that food, and so they're completely removing the calories. But the way that I like to think of it is rather than an energy balance issue, this is more of a biochemical balance issue, right? So there's something about the dairy there that's causing them to store more body fat. Right. So it's maybe a little bit to do with having more fatty acids in the bloodstream and things, and so the body does have to store that before it gets used. But there'll be something about the dairy that is causing a biochemical imbalance that's not making them lose any more weight.
Right. Interesting. I think I saw
basically
a few minutes.
And so it's about looking at it from.
I'm sorry. I think I saw a few minutes of the Diet Dunce's program that where you had I think it was the two ladies, and one was further along I think than the other, and so that was I think that was it exactly. So that's yeah, great idea. Let me see. Well, along the same line, Sam, one of another common thing would be someone who's really used to just taking in a lot of sugar. Almost you might even get into a sugar addiction thing, and that's from my experience has been one of the more difficult things to deal with. Then you get into the issue of the artificial sweeteners, and there's different opinions about that. How do you deal when you see someone who's really used to taking a lot of simple carbs and a lot of sugars, and they want to change, but then they still are they have the dopamine problem that they're getting that stimulation of the dopamine, and you perhaps get some dopamine resistance, and so then they start to really feel terrible. They get the withdrawal symptoms. And what's your experience, and any tips on that?
Yeah, so I do in fact have a client at the moment who's kind of going through that kind of experience where she has been used to a lot of simple carbohydrates, and she's kind of swapped out for artificial sweeteners and things, which is kind of, a progress, I suppose. But ideally, we want to obviously get her to be eating real foods. And so, I mean, one of the things that people can deal with kind of sugar cravings, there's two ways to deal with it. There's either kind of wean yourself off, which would be a case of, having more kind of berries and cherries and things like that. Instead of a chocolate bar, then have the berries and cherries, or something like that, and even some dark chocolate as well would be absolutely fine. But again, people can really overdo it on the dark chocolate, and end up just having just as much sugar through that. Right. So people just need to make sure that they limit that amount as well, kind of at least to kind of around about anywhere between 50 to 30 grams of dark chocolate a day would be kind of a maximum. And even I encourage people to completely remove that, even just for an initial 3 weeks. So you can kind of swap those. And then also with the drink side of things, if people are swapping, regular Coke for Diet or Coke Zero, then I'd ask them to swap the Diet Coke and Coke Zero for just water and a squeezed lemon or lime or any citrus fruit into their water, just so then they've got a little bit of taste, or even sparkling water with a citrus fruit squeezed into it, just so that then they've got the fizz, they've got some flavour. Okay, that's cool. And the other way, obviously, is just going cold turkey. Doesn't work for everybody. It's probably one of the most difficult things is to go cold turkey. But if you could, and the thing is with this, is that when it comes down to transitioning from a fake foods diet to a real foods diet, there will be an element of willpower there at the beginning, at least for kind of the first 3 to 4 weeks. You've got to kind of hold on. It's a cliffhanger moment,
Yes.
try and hold on. But if you hold on for that 3 to 4 weeks, then your biochemistry completely changes. Right, and your metabolism completely changes, so you'll be running more on fat, and also the biochemistry in your brain will completely change in terms of not searching for sugar, but being satisfied by fat.
Right.
And then you don't eat to excess and things like that, because your behavior is going to completely change, because the biochemistry in your brain is completely changing.
Yes, that's a wonderful thing, that the satiety reflex, I guess some would call it, and yeah, fantastic. Well, that's great tips, very great tips. Well, Sam, I know we could go on forever. Let me try to limit myself, because it's very interesting getting your picking your brain on these topics, and I think people will benefit a lot. So let me just try to pick one more question, and then we'll sort of wrap things up. Here's a very common one. What would be your take on supplements? I would imagine you're more of probably a real food first advocate, as many of us probably are. But do you find supplements are helpful for your program? And if so, what would you give people? How would you handle that question?
So as you say, I'm more of a real foods person first. I used to be almost like at the beginning, like most people are. They're very militant about that. So you start off sort of saying, no, just eat real food. That's the only way to be, and things like that. But then kind of, reality hits home when you start actually coaching clients.
Yes.
And things. And then you can start to actually see things from other people's perspective. And then supplements can become a bit more as a viable option for people. And just really the only 2 supplements that I'd recommend are vitamin D,
yes,
and an omega-3 as well. Those are kind of the big 2 that people are deficient on. People probably don't eat enough fish, and also a lot of people don't get enough sunlight or even fish, because you can get vitamin D from fish and things like that. So yeah, definitely getting people to supplement with vitamin D and omega-3. I mean, ideally, kind of just getting them to eat salmon would be great, but some people just don't like fish, right. So that's going to be very, very difficult. And their palate will change over time. You've got to be patient as a coach to wait for that to happen. So yeah, that's good. And then another thing is that you can. There's a new line that we're testing out at the moment called Purition, which is basically it's a real food shake, which is it's just nuts and seeds ground up.
Right.
Like really, really finely, and you can chuck it in either a nut milk or actual dairy milk, or something like that, or you can even mix it with with yogurt, yes. Or even with eggs. You can make pancakes from it. So that type of thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because it's just basically a nut and seed flour.
Yes.
You could do this with almond flour or anything like that. But it's even finer, this stuff, and it's got whey protein in it and all that jazz.
Yeah. Interesting.
And so you can just mix it with eggs. And literally what I do, I mix it with eggs.
Right.
And if you chuck it on a small plate that's got little raised edges, then it makes a perfect circle. And then you chuck it in the microwave for 1 minute, and then it literally makes a pancake. It's almost like an American pancake, which is great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it's dead quick. In fact, I just put up that recipe on our blog and app today. So yeah, check that out if you want.
Yeah,
and you can use almond flour or anything like that. But this Purition stuff, it's kind of lots of nuts and seeds mixed together, so kind of the flavour is a bit nicer and things like that. But having something like that, we've been testing it over the past 6 weeks with our campers. They've just said it's just been really useful to have that type of thing, just to chuck on stuff.
Yes.
So having that type of thing is kind of useful because it's dead quick.
Right,
as well
and
for
that
people.
probably also is going to help with getting enough fiber, which is another issue. Sometimes when people go to the higher fat and get off the grains, they're sometimes not getting enough fiber from their vegetables, and that's fantastic. Great. Well, Sam, this has been a blast, and I feel like we could go for 3 more hours here. Or more, or 3 more days, but I know you're busy, and I don't want to abuse your generosity with us today and coming on the show. But I do like to before we wrap up, I usually like to ask everyone. This is actually sort of something from the Bulletproof podcast, but I really like this element about. But instead of asking you for the 3 things that Dave Asprey asked, we're going to limit it just to if you were picking two key things. Would be for success in any endeavor. Doesn't have to be health and fitness, but two key things to people out there that want to, as far as success in any new endeavor, which would be for a lot of people who have never been into health or fitness. This would be something that's really new to them. Could you offer any strategies or any simple ideas that the idea of small hinges that swing big doors?
Yeah, that's right. So the 2 things are patience and direction, right? So with patience, so if you have been eating a kind of conventional diet, low fat diet for some time that's included fake foods, what we'd consider fake foods, that being kind of cereal, supermarket bread, fast food as well, even kind of hamburgers and French fries and things like that. If you've been doing that for like 20 to 30 years, don't expect results overnight.
Yes.
Right. So you do have to be really, really patient with it. Even if you don't lose weight for, say, like the first 3 months, you've got to stick with it, because that's quite a good return on investment if you think about it. If you've been kind of doing what we think is the wrong thing for the past 30 years and reversing that in 3 months is not a bad return on investment, really.
Right.
And then the other thing is direction. So having the right direction, you can have the most persistent personality in the world, but if you're going in the wrong direction, you're not going to be getting to the place that you want to go. So you just make sure that you have the right direction, okay? And from the past 15 years of randomized controlled trials, the most obvious place to start is with a low carb, high fat diet of real foods. That's the best starting point. And it's not to say that that's the only solution. It's the best starting point for the majority of us. And once you start there, and then you can kind of move forward with trying to figure out what exactly works for you. It's quite possible that for some people, a low fat, high carb diet of real foods is better for them, depending on their own biochemical individuality. The vegan community kind of shows that in a sense, the fact that people do thrive on that, but it's not for the majority. It's only probably for a minority. But yeah, that's the best direction that I can give people in terms of that, and getting some smart exercise as well, plenty of walking and some slow strength training as well.
Fantastic. Well, Sam, this has been fantastic, and I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that would like to hear more about you and your ideas and your programs. Can you give us the best, your URL and the best places to find you online?
Best place to start is just the website. So you go to smashthefat.com. Then you can go through to the blog, check out all of our interviews, and also kind of all of our social media stuff, Twitter, Facebook, and all that jazz.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a pleasure. It's been a great way to start off the day with this will be one of the better interviews that I'm sure that we've had in our brief history here. And we're going to go ahead. As people may know, we're going to be waiting to start on iTunes in January when we have an accumulation. We've got a special strategy that we're working with a business coach we're going to, hopefully this will work to propel us into the new and noteworthy section, and you'll be among the first interviews to go live. We will have this just in the next week or so on YouTube. So once again, big thank you to Sam. Really appreciate your time, and congrats on all your success so far, and look forward to staying in touch with you.
Absolutely, Dan. Be my pleasure.
Fantastic. Have a great day, Sam.